Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life Community Calendar at ncwlife.com.
Hi, and welcome to Life with Lisa Bradshaw. On today's show is April Welch. She is the owner of Flirting with Social. Hold on a second, I gotta get this real quick. Hello, this is Lisa. Oh, hi. Actually, I'm taping my show right now. Can I give you a call back a little bit later?
Sure, I guess so.
Okay, well, thanks. Okay, bye. Okay. That's just an example. I would never be so rude as to answer my phone during my show or unprofessional, but that is why April is here today. She's here to talk about etiquette with our cell phones and social media posts and things that are appropriate and not appropriate, not just, things that are scandalous, but just the polite way to post. So this is April Welch. She's here from Flirting with Social, and she's our social media expert right here in our area. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That was just a little trick to illustrate. And then I didn't silence my phone, so it might go off a few more times, and we can just further illustrate how annoying it is to try to have a conversation with someone when their phone continues to interrupt people.
And how tempted are you going to be to pick it up when it goes off?
Not tempted, unless it's my son.
So how are you going to know if it's him?
Right? I better flip it over this way to look. No, but really, okay, so let's start. The reason why I wanted to have you here, I just recently got back from vacation for a couple of weeks. Spent a lot of time in restaurants and airports and around teenagers, and just really decompressed from work and things. And it was very, very difficult to see how much social media, not really social media, but the cell phone use in public settings, and we'll get to the social media aspect of things in a minute, but in everywhere, in public, everywhere you look, you're trying to walk through the airport, people are bumping into you. No one's paying attention to anyone in front of them or behind them. So let's just talk a little bit about the things that we're all seeing today and what suggestions do you have for people. We also want to talk about, giving parents advice as they start to let their kids have freedom with social media and a cell phone.
Absolutely.
It's happening younger and younger.
I think so. And I think, one of the things that I teach when I'm working with businesses is we're starting to deal with a generation that has never known the world without first the internet, and now never known the world without Facebook. And
any other social media.
And any other social media. But those are good examples, because as we are older generation, I guess we're an older generation now.
Yes.
As we are looking at what our childhood was like compared to what our kids' childhood is like, it's a little bit of an eye-opener to realize that they'll never know what a rotary phone is.
Well, and the thing that I think about that, I do have an opinion that might be a little different from yours about that, only because when I think of when I had a rotary phone to when we had the push-button phone to when, we lived through that time, which is much different than when our parents had, party lines and different people coming in on the phone. To me, the progress isn't so much the problem. It is what we're doing with that progress. And the only people to really properly police it are parents. They are the ones in charge of this entire situation, and they are the ones doing the most complaining.
And they're also...
I should say we. I'm a parent too, so I'm not throwing blame. I'm saying what can be done.
And you mentioned, being in airports and restaurants and, and for me, driving into Wenatchee and things like that, seeing the example that the parents are actually setting and they don't even realize it. When my son, who's now 18, started driving, the 14, 15-year-old years, I started in on him of don't use your cell phone while you're driving, and yet I had to watch and make sure I wasn't using my cell phone while I was driving.
Absolutely agree. It was an eye-opener for me as well.
And I think it's very hypocritical to try and say to a kid, well, I've been driving for 25 plus years and you're just learning, because it's no different.
A second.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, I admit I used to text and drive limited, maybe at a stoplight, but that doesn't matter because it's just as dangerous. It only takes a second.
Yes.
It only takes a second. And how many times have we been on our phone at a stoplight and then started to veer out into traffic thinking that the light turned red when it didn't. Just the light light turned green, just maybe for that left-hand turn, not to go straight.
Yeah.
So there are things that we're just not paying attention to. But I completely gave it up a few years ago, and that's no coincidence. It's about the time my son started to drive.
I was going to say, for me too. I mean, I wasn't really a distracted driver because it scared me. Because I did remember a day when we didn't have cell phones and we weren't distracted, and all you had was the road to look at. And, you know, it scared me more to pick a phone up while I was driving or even at a stoplight because I stopped paying attention to what was going on around me. But, you know, I think that there's this transition that's happened with the younger generation of they've always had a cell phone or they've always been connected. And so they're handing their 2-year-old an iPad or even their cell phone and giving them much more screen time as, you know, you've heard it kind of say as the babysitter of this generation, you know, being in the restaurants and seeing them hand the toddler to quiet them down. And I got to tell you, there's a particular restaurant that I don't go out very often, but we went to, and I was really appalled that every single table had an iPad attached to it. And it made me sick to my stomach because we're having a meal together. This is really the time to come together as a family and to talk about your day and to connect physically with the people you're sitting with. And if you're trying to cut back your screen time and you go to a restaurant and there's screens there, how are you going to tell your toddler, well, I didn't bring the iPad, you have to actually color on this piece of paper when they're providing that screen? So you have to kind of be very selective of who's matching the morals and the values that you're trying to teach your kids as you patronize as well.
Well, when we come back, one of the things I want to talk about are the suggestions for, you know, we've heard them, things like, you know, set your phone down in a restaurant and whomever picks it up first has to pay for the bill and that sort of thing. And those are all very, you know, maybe even obvious because we've heard them so much. But one of the things I wanted to talk about when we come back about that I just saw on Facebook the other day is the new law that's coming into play that is, I hope, going to completely change the way that we deal with our phones in the car. I'm just waiting for them to come up with a way where the phone can't even be used if you're in the car and the car's in motion. That can't be far off, I'm thinking.
Possibly. I think the biggest challenge, and we can talk about it in the next segment, is if you're a passenger.
Right.
It still shuts off?
Yeah, I mean, that's okay, isn't it? I don't know.
It should be,
See,
but
it's tough. Maybe if you're in the driver's seat. I'm not an engineer. I've got a lot of use to the right side of my brain. I don't have any use much of the left side. So I don't have all of those answers. And that's part of the problem is the answers are tough.
They are.
The questions are tough and the answers are tougher.
Yeah.
And I think it's tougher and tougher for parents. And I mean, I'm not throwing judgment out there at all. I've raised a kid, he's 18, he's leaving for college. I did the best I could. I'm sending him out in the world. Don't know, you know, hopefully he grabs onto some of this stuff that I've tried to teach him. But we'll come back in just a moment. We're going to talk more about etiquette in restaurants and friendships and phone calls when you're trying to have a conversation in just a moment.
Please join us weekly for the 12th District with yours truly, Carrie Condata. Check your channel guide for times or go to ncwlife.com for details.
Hi, we're back. This is Life with Lisa Bradshaw, and I am talking with April Welch today. She is the owner of Flirting with Social, and she's also our social media expert right here in our area. And we spent the first segment talking a bit about kind of ranting a little bit about the things we're observing today. And it's not just teenagers. No. It's all ages, people using their phones. And I was mentioning how I traveled a lot over the last couple of weeks, and in airports, people are bumping into me because they're not paying attention where they're walking. Or, you know, I find sometimes when I'm working, because I edit a few magazines, and so I have the ability to pull this little pin out of my phone. And I only have my phone on the desk right now because we did a little thing earlier in the show, but so I can write directly on the screen. So I might be standing there doing something, being somewhere, and writing on my screen, and I always think, oh, people think I'm just being antisocial, but I'm actually working. Right. Or I'll be in the grocery store and I'll look at my list on my phone, and I think people think, get off your phone, get out of the aisle, we're trying to shop here. But so there are uses that we have for them these days that are very useful.
Well, and really, when you think about it, everything you explained used to be, pen and paper.
Right.
And we would pull it out, and so people knew what we were doing.
Right.
And so now that it's consolidated and we can multitask,
Exactly.
it looks like we're on our phone all the time, but nobody knows what that really means from one person to the next.
Yeah, you could be posting on social media, you could be taking notes, you could be working, you could be flirting in a text. I mean, you could be doing anything. So let's talk about, before the break, we mentioned that there's a new law coming down that I'm super happy about. And it basically says that you cannot have anything in your hand. And it talks about food and other things like makeup, food. It didn't address dogs in the lap, but that's another show. But it talks about that you literally, if you can't use your phone, your device, to just swipe it once, like to answer, or swipe it to ignore. One swipe, which is kind of the equivalent to, depending on where your phone is, you don't want to be reaching around,
Right.
but it's kind of the equivalent to changing the station on the radio, I guess is what they're thinking. So that's going to change things, because the fines are getting hefty, they're reporting it to insurance, the fines are going to get higher each time you're caught.
Yes. It's going to be, I think, difficult to, I don't know if I should say prove, but it's going to be difficult to enforce. Yes.
Oh, I don't think. How many times are you at a stoplight and you see someone going by with the phone like this or on there, and
Well,
they don't get stopped? Don't they have to be stopped? I don't want to get into the law, I guess.
Right.
But don't you think it's going to be simpler? Like, they need less of a reason
Well, I guess
to pull you over now.
to really pull the point together is we basically have gone into a society where we're going to pass a law because we cannot self-regulate ourselves.
That's true with everything, though. Every law is there for that reason.
Okay, so
Right.
here we are with the digital citizenship part of it that
Right.
says you don't know how to behave as a responsible person behind the wheel, so we're going to pass a law that says this is what you have to do. Well, you're still going to have the people who disregard that rule, and you're going to have the people who do follow it, but those might have been the people that were already putting the phones down anyway. I don't know what percentage of society is actually going to stop using their gadgets behind the wheel because of a law.
Well, I think that let's compare that perhaps to a DUI. So people, when they started cracking down and it started costing money, nothing gets people paying more attention than their pocketbook. So you start charging more for a DUI, you start having it be a big old, it's a whole ordeal. Whereas before it was, people got away with a lot more. So there are those people who are going to drink and drive no matter what. But
Right.
there are those people who are more careful now, because even if they can't think about the safety of others, which I think a lot of people do, they also think about those fines and what it would cost, and they could lose their job, they could lose their marriage. So I'm wondering if this could eventually be in that category where
Maybe.
there's so many consequences to it, it's just not worth it.
It's not worth it anymore. And that very well could be. You think about, for me, what stopped me was, as we talked about, my son started driving, and so I had to pay attention to my own habits and what kind of an example I was setting for him the years leading up to him driving. But you also think about, you have these consequences. Maybe you have been, I guess where I'm going with it is you've been a victim of a drunk driver, a loved one was killed. And so you resolved to never drink and drive. And so I think that we're entering into statistics that say, I know someone or I'm related to someone who has been a victim of distracted driving. And so, yes, I think it's become more of a mainstream thing to think about as
It's
we
life
get
and
behind
death.
the wheel. Exactly.
It is so incredibly dangerous.
Exactly.
And I'd imagine it happens much more than people drinking and driving.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's the devices there for them to use at all times.
Well, and how many times have you been driving? For me, I live in Leavenworth, and so to be driving from Leavenworth to Wenatchee, and I put my phone away, I turn the volume off, I just, unless I know that my son is somewhere and he might need something, then I might let it be on so I know if he needs to get a hold of me, but I don't answer it while I'm driving. So I'm driving along, and here's the semi that's like weaving in front of me, because he's looking at his phone, and I mean, it used to be, oh, he's tired. Well, now I make the assumption he must be looking at his phone.
I do that a lot, and I see that with people, and then I see that they've got a burger in their hand or something. And I think people should take a look at the law. Don't take our word for it. We might have it skewed a bit here in our talk, but there are some stipulations to it, and I think that some of the things. You get pulled over for, and then you can get in trouble for something else.
Right.
But it's not just, you're not going to get pulled over for eating a burger. But if they see that there's a distraction that happened because you have that in your hand, that sort of thing.
And I will say, being married to a first responder, he's a fireman, and he's around the police force as well, the sheriffs and stuff. And he talks to those guys, and yeah, they can use a burnout taillight to pull over for something that they're suspecting is going on. So now this is going to give them permission to pull you over because they've seen you swerving those lines.
They don't need the broken taillight now.
Right, and I mean,
That's
I know
what I like about it.
Yeah, and I know that it's very controversial of being pulled over and things like that. However, if them pulling over someone that they can see has the phone and they're swerving and they've pulled them over and written them that ticket, whose life could they have possibly just saved? Because maybe 3 blocks down the road was a toddler that was about to go into a crosswalk.
Right.
You just don't know what the ripple effect of that could be. So safety is always, I'm sure, the effort that they're putting behind something like this.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk about before we close this up is the social media aspect of things. And nothing makes me more sad and perhaps even disappointed than seeing someone, for example, take a picture of someone. We've seen them at a particular chain where there's all these pictures of people, and it's all judgment. It's taking a picture of someone doing something that's embarrassing to that person. And even if you don't show their face, it's just harmful, hurtful. And so the other thing, social media and how we post things, we see something we don't like, we can take a picture of it. Even if we don't show their face, we can post it and then start a rant about what this person was doing that we didn't like. The other part of social media that I think is a bit irresponsible is when I see posts of, say, a class at a school. Whether they're at a camp or they're at it's a school picture, and then they post all about that child's school name and all of that. If there's another child in that picture that's recognized by other people, I never liked anyone knowing where my son went to school. Right. Because even though I'm very open about my life, my home I'm private about that.
Yes, absolutely.
Where I live, how I live, that sort of thing. So let's talk about the etiquette of social media and just how to navigate that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a big can of worms. I could go on for days kind of talking about privacy issues. But I think the one rule of thumb that I had as a parent that I always lived by and I've shared with other parents as they have come behind with more access to the digital piece of this social sharing is I always ask, is it my story to share? So if I'm going to talk about, something that my son did, how am I going to frame that in the camera? How am I going to write the content about that's my part of the story? Because it's not my place to tell what's going on in his life. Those are his shoes to walk in. And so that's the moral compass that I've always used and suggested that any of my clients or my students use, because you don't want to get into that sticky situation where, for me, of course, my kids came of age with Facebook. I thought, oh my gosh, when they're 20, if I've posted this, cute picture of them in a bubble bath and that embarrasses them, I won't be able to necessarily take it down because it's out there. And they had no say in that. And so what right do I have, even as their parent, to go and write that story digitally for them before they are capable of choosing? And so I think that's the privacy piece, is to always ask yourself, is this really your place to be talking about it?
Is it your story to tell?
Is it your story to tell?
Yeah, I do believe in, there's some really great uses of social media that I just read one a couple of days ago about a woman posted that her child drowned on 4th of July and survived. And there were 10 adults around the pool. And she was saying how drowning is silent and it's not like the movies and it doesn't make a sound at all. Wow. And it was super powerful, and it was shared hundreds of times. And she wasn't a celebrity or anything. She's just a mom who posted her experience. And I shared it. Summer is here, and it might get someone thinking. So and I wrote to her and said, this is the most, and I don't know her, she's a stranger to me, but this is the most responsible and inspirational piece of Facebook that I've seen in a very long time. So you can use it for good. It can be used for good. But for the ridicule and judgment of others, that's a tough one, and it's so easy to do.
It's very easy to do because we are not, it's that whole idea of we're behind a screen. As we are, tapping or pounding out those negative things that are on our mind, and we would never say it face to face. And that's
it's kind of an act now, apologize later type of thing, and then remove it if it offends anyone, as opposed to not saying it at all.
It also is, it's almost as if people have seen it as a way to take permission of, I'm just going to say what's on my mind, and I don't have to take responsibility for it because it's a stranger. But what they don't realize is it's really showing who you are. Because people that do that, I tend to pull away from. At what point are they going to get mad at me, and I'm going to be the target of what they put out there? So I don't know that.
So really, you're just saying, if we're leaving people thinking about this, it's
Yes.
like, think about what you're posting. Is it your story to tell?
Yes.
Is it a kind and fair story to tell? I don't know that Facebook only can be used for flowers and smiles and happy things. I mean, it can be used for information that's hard to receive and hard to read and all of those things too. But when you take a look at your responsibility and how you're treating the people around you, whether they're your family or friends or strangers, that's part of it. And so let's take a break. And when we come back, let's totally switch gears just a little bit and talk about the business etiquette of things and the social media part of running a business and how that can be used for good as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll come back in just a moment.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
Hi, we're back. We're talking with April Welch of Flirting with Social. We've been talking about social media etiquette and cell phone rules and new laws coming out and just how to try to advise our kids and our friends and ourselves to think about how we post and being responsible for that. And you wanted to add that business is the same.
Business is absolutely the same. I think that the pressure's on because you're a business and maybe you're a little bit more available. People can show up to a brick and mortar, or they know how to find you a little bit easier, but it's still the same. Be respectful, have fun, and don't let the satiation of mainstream media, of all the negativity, pull you down, because there's so many good things that are happening out there with businesses and social media and the positivity that can come from it.
And how they use it.
And how they use it. Tell your story.
It's an extension of your story.
Yeah,
Same. It's your
absolutely.
business story as opposed to your personal story.
Absolutely.
So we have been talking about that for the last bit today on the show, and I wanted to, I guess I could have done this at the beginning, but we did our little trick with the cell phone at the beginning. But tell us exactly what you do here in the area and how people can reach out to you if they want more information about social media and Flirting with Social.
Yeah. So my company is Flirting with Social, and I run a division of that is Social Media School NCW. We meet monthly for workshops, and then there's a Facebook group in between that supports the marketers in the area. The only qualification is that you are curious about how to use social media for marketing, and at some point you're a marketing decision maker, whether you're publishing or signing the check. And it's a lot of fun, and I'm excited. We're going into our second year of workshops, and we cover everything. What's coming up is we just did Instagram. We're going to be doing Pinterest and Snapchat, and
Pinterest is the biggest time
Yes.
sucker of them all.
yes, it is. Facebook Live for business, so they have proper etiquette and how to tell the story and things like that. So lots of topics in there, lots of support with the local marketers as well. It's been a really great group that has come from all of it. And my passion is social media training and helping them to get the right information when they need it so that they can be, behaving and have proper etiquette out there.
From the start, because especially with the live, there's an additional responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you and I had talked about off air about making sure that if a person doesn't want to be on screen, whether it's a picture or video, that they're not, and
Be respectful of that.
and how you use social media with your customers, with your clients, and permissions and those sort of things. Because that's the thing about being out in the public, right? It's just about taking that extra step of responsibility. Same for business.
Absolutely.
So how do people get in touch with you?
flirtingwithsocial.com, or you can sign up for workshops at socialmediaschoolncw.com.
And so when you just finished
Instagram.
and so what's coming up?
Facebook Live for Business
Okay.
101.
That's what you had said.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's part of the school then that
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
And how many weeks of schooling do you offer? It's a consecutive, and you can come to this one and that one, but you don't have to come every single week.
Exactly. It's once a month, and it's just a membership that auto-renews with no contract. So if you decide you want to learn Facebook Live and Snapchat, and then you're not interested in Pinterest, you just pause your membership, and you come to the ones you want, use the support, and away we go.
Away you go. Okay. Well, thanks for being here,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll have some teenagers on next time.
Oh,
to
that'd be
talk
so
about
fun.
cell phone use.
For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.